as well as the Woodrow-Wilson Bridge Compact. Also with George Mason's Prince William campus. So he had quite a distinguished career while he was in Richmond. A couple of things I really want to mention, because you don't find many people who buy abandoned railroads. This is really of interest because he bought a 16-mile abandoned railroad in King George County just to preserve it from being lost to development. Also, I want to mention that it is particularly poignant tonight that he is our moderator because in 1992 he sponsored the legislation that authorized the election of school boards in Virginia rather than having them be appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And most of all, I will point out he is a long-time member of this Prince William Committee of 100. So let's welcome David Brickley.
Martha, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I'll also put in a plug for the Committee of 100. If you're not a member, really consider joining. It's a wonderful group, fantastic subjects, really nice people of all faiths, colors, political parties, dialogues, etc. So really think about it, and it's good to be here. We have what I hope is going to be a fun evening tonight, and it's on. After many years, legislation allowing the election of school board members in Virginia was passed by the General Assembly in 1992. Prior to that, Virginia was the only state in the nation that didn't allow elected school board members. And currently, approximately 110 of the 134 school boards in Virginia are elected. Now, the Virginia Constitution, ironically, has consistently allowed either elected or appointed school boards. If you go back and look at what's going back to literally the 1700s. In the middle of the 20th century, Arlington got legislation passed authorizing it to have an elected school board, be the only one in Virginia. But race and schools quickly became embroiled in the South, Virginia being part of the South and no exceptions. Eruptions took place, controversy, all over the place. And finally, then, of course, in 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Board of Elections that our schools throughout the country had to be desegregated. So Arlington County had this elected school board, and it said, well, we're going to comply with Brown versus the Board of Education, and we're going to open up our schools and desegregate them. Well, the Virginia General Assembly said, well, we've got another thing thinking about this, boy. And they said, forget it. So in 1956, legislation was passed yanking away the ability of Arlington County to have elected school boards in Virginia. Obviously, no other one could do it additionally. And then there were a number of other very obstructive statutes that were passed to try to prevent this from happening, the war on the massive resistance. Hopefully that is a thing of our past, but it was very poignant for back in the 1950s, and certainly that was the end of elected school boards in Virginia. I put the bill in back in 1976. Chuck Hogan, our great senator, he and I got elected together, put the bill in the Senate. It got absolutely no place in the Senate, not because of Chuck, because Chuck's fantastic, but some of the personalities there. I made a little progress in the House, but it literally didn't take till, again, 1992 that was finally passed by the General Assembly and then signed by Governor Wilder. When you go back to, you've got to look, we talk about massive resistance and desegregation. You had a period in Virginia in the mid-20th century and past then where county government was controlled by the courthouse crowd. That meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but the idea was to ensure that things like our school board were run the way they should run based on the feelings and beliefs way back when. And so we had either school boards being appointed by trustees who were appointed by the local judges, or, as in the case of Prince William County, appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Now, Article 8 of the Constitution, Section 1, requires that public schools of high quality be maintained. And Section 2, right after that, says that the standards of quality are going to be determined by the State Board of Education, subject to the General Assembly. And then the General Assembly shall provide how the funds are to be provided for meeting the standards of quality, and shall provide for the apportionment of costs between the state and the localities. As you know, the Virginia Constitution does not allow for taxing authority for the school boards. When we put the legislation in and did a number of studies over the years in Virginia in the General Assembly for elected school boards, the question was asked, well, should we allow it to have taxing authority? I would tell you back then, and I sense that it probably hasn't changed a whole lot now, there was a resounding no. The citizens seemed to want to have one taxing authority in each locality to be able to go to, and it wasn't the school board at the time. It was just the Board of Supervisors or the City Council and Mayor. So that's where we are today. So when times are good, everybody's happy. But when the dollars come up short, the fingers start pointing. Will the General Assembly cut Prince William's school funding? Will the Board of Supervisors to agree to give the schools a greater proportion of its funds or increase the tax rate? Will the school board vote to ask the Board of Supervisors to raise the tax rate or request that they be given taxing authority? Will the teachers to be content to avoid layoffs or take further steps to show their displeasure? Or could it be that the school board's agreement last night on the superintendent's proposed budget resolved these issues, at least for this year? To answer these questions and the others, you've got on your program, each of our speakers have received, and I believe each of you have seen, the 6 questions actually that are on the agenda that we'd like to address. And if they can address any of the others that I've thrown in here at the same time, that would be great. But to answer those questions, we have really been fortunate to have a fantastic, a stellar panel. It's really going to be exceptional. We have...
Is this a trick played?
This is not trick at all. What, you can't?
We don't have the questions.
The teacher paid attention and got the questions.
Well, we got to find out what these questions are then. We'll do that then right now. Jack, you've got him out there? As I'm doing that, let me say that first of all, we're joined, and thank goodness that he's here, Delegate Scott Langenfelder. There we go. Great.
Thank you.
Scott was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates in 2001, representing Prince William and Fauquier counties. He's a member of the House Appropriations Committee, the Education Committee, and Militia and Public Safety Committees. Came here from the military, did a fantastic job, and recognized earning the Bronze Star in Iraq as a colonel in the United States Army. He's got his BA from VMI. He's got his master's from the University of Virginia. He lives with his wife, Shelley, and they have 3 wonderful children living in Prince William County, Virginia. And he was elected, as if I didn't say, back in when were you elected, Scott? In
2001.
2001. So it's good to have Scott here. And thank you for the good job that you do in Richmond. Mike May serves as our Occoquan supervisor. He's been there since 2007. And prior to that, he served as the at-large representative on the Prince William County Planning Commission and also served on the Prince William County Social Services Board. Regionally, and this is important for Virginia and for Prince William County, he serves as Prince William County's representative to the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments Transportation Planning Board, the TPB, chairman of the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, something that I love very much, and a member of the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. He's a practice attorney. He works with the law firm of Alwo and Oberon in Arlington, Virginia, focuses on civil litigation and employment law. He earned his J.D. from George Mason University School of Law, and he's got his bachelor's degree from the College of William and Mary. He lives in Lake Ridge with his lovely wife, Amelia, and their 2 children. Milton Johns began his second term as chairman of the Prince William County School Board this January. He's an attorney in private practice with over 20 years in the national defense industry. He's a graduate of George Washington University with a BA in political science, earned a master's degree also from George Washington University, and he got his JD, his Juris Doctorate, from George Mason University School of Law. Before taking office as chairman at large in January of 2008, he served as the Brentsville District representative on the school board from 2004 to 2007. He's also a member of the Radford University Board of Visitors, and he served on Governor McDonald's K-12 education transition team from 2009 to 2010. He and his wife Shelley live with their 2 children in Prince William, and we're glad to have him here. Bonnie Klakowitz is an elementary school teacher with 28 years of school experience, 22 of those in the Prince William County school system, and she's currently serving now as the full-time president of the Prince William Education Association. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Virginia Tech and has a Master's of Fine Arts degree from Radford University. She's also on the Virginia Education Association Board of Directors and on their legislative committee, and is chair of the UniServe Council for District 9. She served on an appointee to the Virginia Department of Education work group that was charged with developing the statewide standards-based evaluation system in 2011. She also lives with her husband, Jim, and their 2 children. Everybody's got 2 children here, with Jim and the 2 children in Prince William County. I think what I'm going to do, let me set the ground rules here, folks, if I can, please. Let's first of all give them an applause for coming tonight. We're going to go ahead and allow you, in the order that I'm going to tell you what it is right now, to spend up to 10 minutes. Okay? Not 12 minutes, but 10 minutes. Jim O'Connor is really tough in his signs, and he's going to let you know when everything is going, so you know that when it's time to sit down and conclude your remarks, you will do it, as I'm sure will happen regardless. After each of you have done the 10 minutes, we will then have 2 minutes for each of you to see if there's any comments or rebuttals you'd like to make from any other comments that the other 3 panelists have made. And then after that, we're going to open it up to questions that we'll have, first of all, from our Committee of 100 members, and then certainly time from the very lovely non-members that have decided to come here tonight and be part of this wonderful presentation. So I think what I'm going to do is have, if I could, have Milt Johns, as our chair of the school board, come up first, make his presentation, and then I'm going to go down by hierarchy in elective office, per se, since that's the animal I come from, and have Delegate Langenfelder next. Then we'll have Supervisor Mike May next, and then Prince William President School Board Association, or Prince William PWEA President Bonnie Klakowitz. Milt?
Well, thank you all very much to the Committee of 100 for inviting me to join you tonight, and I'm very excited to be here. So I'll be referring to this package that's at your table. And obviously, I'm not David S. Klein, but what I did is I made a Frankenstein's monster out of a couple of his recent briefs to kind of select some relevant slides to take a look at. And I think it'll be important for our discussion tonight because it lays the foundation of some of the facts and figures that we're working with our school budget. Now, obviously, we have the 6 questions, and for folks who may or may not have them, the 6 questions are Prince William County schools able to offer a good education for county students within current resources? Can they compete for good teachers with surrounding jurisdictions? That's question number 1. Number 2, would a tax increase be unduly burdensome for property owners at this time? Would it affect housing values? That's number 2. Number 3, when the state budget is passed, is it likely to increase or decrease funding for Prince William County schools? That's the 3rd question. Number 4, should the schools compete with other services for a share of the county budget each year or receive a guaranteed percentage as at present? That's number 4. And then actually it looks like 5 questions. Number 5 is, should taxing powers be granted to the elected school boards? So Actually, the first 4 questions will largely be answered.
I believe that's my presentation. I don't think Mill has his on the computer.
Yeah, this is Mike's.
Okay, sorry.
That's right. Well, we'll have some discussion later about which board does which board's job, but we'll get started with facts and figures for now. I'm just kidding, Mike.
I know. Sorry.
Okay, so what are major budget factors that we're facing right now? There will be increased revenues, but the increased revenues are offset. And the biggest offset, the biggest challenge we have right now budget-wise is our continued growth in enrollment. We're looking at an additional 2,767 students for the fall, which will put us up over 83,000, almost 84,000 students. We are the second largest school system in the Commonwealth of Virginia, just behind Fairfax, and we are 41st in the nation. So we're a very large school system. Probably the biggest hit to our budget is a major increase in the cost for the Virginia Retirement System, or VRS. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I've got a slide. Also, cost of competing adjustment. Now, VRS and the cost of competing adjustment are pieces of the state budget. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and Delegate Lingfelter, I'm sure, may have even more updates on where we are with that. Another big factor, desire to remain competitive in salary and benefits. There's been a lot of discussion in the school system with the school board about salary and benefits. Maximizing instruction to our students, trying to maintain all of our instructional programs, and to try to at least hold the line on class size, or to at some point attempt to reduce it. And then, of course, maintaining our capital infrastructure, construction, maintenance, and technology. As we continue to grow by students, we continue to have a requirement for additional facilities. So the next slide really focuses on this challenge with the growth in student enrollment. Over the past 5 years, we've had over a 15% growth in enrollment. And of that 15%, we've seen a 16% increase in special education, 17% in ESOL, that's English spoken as another language, and then free and reduced lunch population is 37%. Now, those some students may be in more than one category. But as you can see, our student growth has gone up, and also the populations that require additional resources for instruction, either by state mandate or federal mandate, or by instructional requirements, has also increased. So the students that require higher funding levels have also increased in the system as well. Next one is a little pie chart that gives us a snapshot of our operating fund. Where does the money come from? And this is one of the questions that we'll be dealing with tonight. The school board does not control its own revenue. We have no way to increase money on our own. Or if we feel we need more money, more revenue, we have no mechanism to do that ourselves. So as you can see, 43%, just about 44%, comes from the county. And that's part of, it's derived from our revenue sharing agreement, the revenue sharing agreement that we've had with the county for at least 10 years now, is that the schools receive 56.75% of the county's general revenue. And this is something I've addressed before. I'll skip ahead to the fifth question. Should we compete, or should we have a guaranteed percentage as at present? I support the revenue sharing plan. And I always have supported it, and I will continue to support it for this reason. It worked in good times, and it needs to work in bad times. I think if the revenue sharing agreement would go away, there's no guarantee we would get more money. Okay, skipping ahead. I've already got my halfway point notice, so we've got to skip ahead. Cost per pupil. As you can see, Prince William County is ahead of only Spotsylvania and Stafford in cost per pupil, $9,852. We have even lower cost per pupil than Fauquier and Manassas Park. So this is a pretty illustrative slide. Now, if you take a look at the prospect of 2,700 new students at roughly $10,000 per student, that's $27 million. So that's additional, above and beyond what our current requirements are. The next slide just gives us a look at the change in cost per pupil over time. And as you can see, in real dollars, we're funding per pupil students, or our per pupil funding rate is below where we were even in 2005. The next page, expenditures by category. As you can see, salary and benefits, we are at 83.5% of our budget goes towards salary and benefits. We are in the people business. We have 10,000 employees. We are the largest non-federal employer in Prince William County. So about 5,000 or so are teachers. The rest are our support staff. So this gives you an idea of where we spend our money. The next slide, our budget is focused on instruction. As you can see, 77.3% of the pie is going towards instruction. This is funds directly related to classroom learning. I know I see a lot of op-eds and I get emails about cutting the bloated central office. We got to cut the administration. As you can see, our central support percentage is pretty small at 4.7%. And in fact, our central staff, central administration, is about 2/3 of the national average by percentage. So we're already fairly lean and mean. Next page is the cost of competing adjustment in VRS, and I'm hopeful Delegate Lingenfelter will speak more to this, but these are two areas where we have a lot of uncertainty in our budget. Right now, our current budget assumes that we'll have a $10.8 million restoration to the cost of competing, and that's a delta to funding that's given to Northern Virginia schools, so recognizing that the cost of living is higher and it costs more to try to hire teachers in Northern Virginia. The VRS system, that's the retirement plan for pensions. The rate that that the school system pays for our employees, and right now our 2 minutes left, our pensions are fully funded by the school system. Our employees are not contributing to the VRS pension. Has gone up by over 50% in 1 year. So that's a $32 million hit to our budget. We had been planning for increases in VRS, but this was even larger than we expected. And $32 million roughly translates to a step plus 2% pay raise. We've kept, the next slide shows that we've kept health insurance rates the same for employees, whereas nationally they've gone up about 10%. Okay, salary comparisons, and this goes back to the first question: can we offer a good education with the current resources? Can we compete for good teachers? We do offer good education for our students, and especially dollar for dollar and pound for pound. We've been rated very competitive by the Center for American Progress, Claire Booth Luce Policy Institute. So as you can see, for salary and benefits for a $65,000 employee, we are ahead of Manassas Park and Manassas, but you have most of the surrounding jurisdictions on a relatively close scale. The next page shows our Step 1 bachelors, so someone coming right out of school to teach. We are sort of in the middle of the pack, and again, pretty close relatively to the surrounding jurisdictions. Pay raise summary. Again, this chart just gives you a 20 seconds a look at what we've done the last few years. I'm about to run out of time, so I may have to come back to this in my 2-minute rebuttal. But let me see. Well, you have the rest of the slides there. You can take a look at them. So to answer the revenue sharing agreement, we should have school boards, they should look at having taxing authority. I'm going to make a bunch of controversial statements and then sit down. That'll be fair, right? So I'll look forward to my rebuttal time to conclude my remarks.
Thank you very much.
Delegate Scott Lingenfelter.
Well, good evening, everyone. And you know you're in trouble when the press gets some more robust applause than the politicians do. Let me share a couple of things with you, and then I'll attempt to address a couple of these questions and maybe relieve some of the concern that the county has. First of all, let me just give you a quick update. Yes, we have no budget. We are down there working on it. I think that what's really kind of pathetic about it, if you want to know the truth of it, is we're so close on every single commodity area. But there's been some politics that have found their way into it. Imagine that, politics in the General Assembly. But politics have found its way into the debate, and unfortunately, we're kind of caught up in that. If you want a prognosis, I think that the conferees, including Senator Colgan, who I think is really wanting to get a budget, so I give him a round of applause because I think he's actually down there trying to get that done. I would guess that by the end of the month, we'll have that budget inked, and that's really important because these local school boards and the local county boards can't do their job, and Ernie can't do his job unless they know what the budget holds for them in the future. Let me do this, David, if I could. I'm going to kind of go through a couple of things here. I'd kind of like to give you a state vision right first because I think it's important to understand where it is. Dr. Wright, who is the state superintendent of public education, shared with the House Education Committee that I sit on several weeks ago that Education Week has once more ranked Virginia the fourth best school system in the nation for education policy and performance in their 2012 Quality Counts report. It is clear our students continue to be among the highest achieving in the nation on the average placement test on the SAT and the ACT college entrance exams. In 2010, almost 24% of the Commonwealth's public high school seniors earned a score of 3 or better, qualifying for college credit on at least one advanced placement examination. Furthermore, the results from national testing taken last year have shown that Virginia's elementary, my wife is a kindergarten teacher, it's a big deal for her, and middle school students continue to outperform their peers nationwide and rank fourth in the nation on the fourth grade reading test. The report's findings confirm that Virginia continues to be a national leader in quality education. Let me just divert for a quick second to sort of say to you that the variance between what the Senate is proffering in their education budget and what the House is proffering is actually very small. And one of the areas that I've been very active in is the restoration of the inflation piece, which I'm happy to tell you both houses are agreed to restore that. That's very important to these school divisions. And through some efforts, partly mine and with colleagues in the House, we were able to get a piece of the cost of competing restored. The Senate is more generous in what they want to do, and what I would say to you is I'm fighting actually for us to actually embrace the Senate's position on this because that would restore completely the cost of competing piece. And that's a big hit on the county's part, although I think I've got some good news on where you're going to turn out. The governor's introduced budget for public education provided school divisions with a net increase of $438 million more in revenues over the new biennium. The largest portion of the funding in the introduced budget, the governor's initial budget that he brought us, included $342 million to pay for the state's share of increasing the teacher retirement rate from 6.33% to 11.66%, as well as increasing group life and retiree health care credit rates. As the House budget was being developed, one of the principles that we adopted was to provide help to localities. While state revenues have, in fact, begun to rebound, and if you've seen recently, we are 17% up over this time last year. That's quite remarkable. For annualized, that means we're expecting to see growth of 4.3% in Virginia. We're looking at 5% level right now. So that's a good news story. But one of our principles was, in fact, to help localities. And as those state revenues have, in fact, rebounded, localities are still grappling. Unfortunately, these localities, my localities, both Prince William and Fauquier, are grappling with the problems of depressed real estate and so on and so forth, which has a direct impact on their ability to meet their obligations. I don't want to take up too much time because I don't want to just read a lot of factoids to you, but I do want to share with you, hot off the press, a couple of things so that you will know. In the previous biennium, the one that we're doing away with now and we're going to replace with a new biennium budget, Prince William County received $398,495,020 from the state. And that's a lot of money. But we have a lot of needs. Thank you. In the first year of the budget, the introduced budget by the governor, he wanted to raise that to $421 million for the biennium. We were a little more generous. The Senate was a little more generous than that. And if you were to split the difference right now, Milt, I would tell you we're looking at somewhere in about $432 million, maybe as high as $437 million for FY13. Now, when you go to FY14, we've actually bumped it up a little higher, and I would guess, Milt, that that's going to be somewhere in and around $443 million, and both the Senate and the House are in complete agreement on that number. So it's good news in so much as we are really making an effort to try to help in education. Now, why are we doing that? Because I'm married to a school teacher. That's why we're doing it. No, we're doing it because it is vital to do. Let me digress for a minute. I sit on the governor's Higher Education Commission. He appointed me to this 2 years ago, and we've been working very hard on higher education issues as well. And one of the things that clearly comes home to us is if you can get the population into that 4-year college piece, and it's not a perfect fit for everybody, I'm not saying that, but the people who are able to take advantage of 4 years of college do so well, not only from an economic viewpoint for the rest of their life, but there's a lot of family stability that accompanies that. And so the governor's been very aggressive about how we're going to increase the degree awarding here in Virginia. Now, part and parcel of that, hand in hand, is what we're doing in K-12 to set the conditions for kids to be successful in college work. And it's tough. And if you talk to some college presidents, they'll tell you they've seen kids show up that have had to be remediated in English composition. They've had to be remediated in math. And so it's not a completely rosy picture. The point is this, though. If we're going to have college-ready kids who get in there and start getting the work done, they've got to be prepared in K-12. And that, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at the ledger, requires that we put some money up. Now, let me share with you, because I think it's important to understand this. I dare say Dave heard this quite a few years himself. But the General Assembly always hears, we're cutting education, we're cutting education, we're cutting education. We haven't cut it yet since I've been down there. And I want to give you some facts. And these are facts. Since 2000, up until the 2012 budget, Virginia's increase in, and that's Virginia's piece, to local aid has gone up 50%, 50.5%, while the actual daily, average daily membership, again, Virginia-wide, has gone up 8.2%. Prince William is much quicker. We know that Prince William is growing. So we're sort of out of the ordinary in this respect. But the point is, while we have raised education spending in Virginia from 2000 to 2012 by 50%, enrollment has only gone up 8.2%. Now, a lot of that's cost, some of that's inflation, some of that's, everything from gasoline to food. But I think it's very important for people in this room to understand that the General Assembly is not queasy about taking care of public education. But I think just like all of these gentlemen are tasked to do, we have budgets to do and we have requirements in the law. It's called a balanced budget. Unlike the federal government, we don't get to spend money we don't have. We spend the money that you have sent us, and we have to do it in a responsible manner. And so thank you, David, for giving me a chance to talk. I would say to you in closing, I think I got 1 minute. I got 1 minute? Okay, I got 1 minute. The one question here that you've asked me is, will spending increase? Yes. Money will go up for Prince William. That's a certain fact, and I think it'll go up a good amount in this budget. And should you have a taxing authority for school boards? No.
Thank you, Scott. Supervisor Mike May.
Thank you very much. Found a good follow Delegate Brickley and Delegate Lingenfelter. We're a little bit different in terms of our Hi. I'm going to take some time to go through very briefly what we have on tap for the county budget. I'm going to fly through these slides because I know that the focus here is really more on the schools, but obviously what we do at the county level has an impact on the school budget. So this is our budget objectives. We've seen, if you follow the Board of Supervisors, you may have seen something akin to this, but essentially it talks about some of the highlights. We have a balanced 5-year plan. We don't exceed our debt limits. We use one-time money for one-time capital expenditures, not for ongoing operating expenses. The FY13 budget implements the board budget guidance, and that's to keep average residential tax bills flat when adjusted for inflation. I think that's an important point to think about. Before I got elected, in the boom times, the trick among the Board of Supervisors was to, and I'm not disparaging any of my colleagues or folks that have served there, but really what was happening is they would we would see such a great appreciation in residential real estate values that we would cut the tax rate. Well, I say we, I wasn't on the board at the time, but they would cut the tax rate, and the media would sort of report, oh, we're cutting taxes, and then people would get their tax bills and open them up and see that their bills were going up, and they didn't understand why, if the board was cutting taxes, why their bills were going up. Well, obviously, the decrease in the rate was being outpaced by the increase in assessed value. A lot of people in those days were very active and concerned about the growth in tax bills and the growth in the county budget, and they actually petitioned the board and about the need to keep those bills within inflation, or at least to account for inflation, population growth, and for the board to be a little bit more fiscally responsible. I think in the past years we actually have done that. In some years the average tax bill has gone up by about inflation, and in other years, in fact in fiscal year 10, I want to say it went down by about 13% on the average residential taxpayer. So what we've tried to do over the past several years is not focus so much on what the rate is, but focus on property values, focus on the actual bill that people are getting, and focus on the overall county expenditures. And I think that we've been able to bring the budget into balance and really keep things under control. And we during the same period, population growth, as we know, has continued, and that, Milt talked about that, and that's one of the things that the school system and the county have had to deal with. But the fact of the matter is that on the county side and on the school side, we're doing more with less. But the good news is we do a citizen satisfaction survey every year to see how we're doing, to get a relative measure of the areas that we're doing well. And actually, citizen satisfaction with respect to the value people believe they're receiving for their tax dollar is actually at an all-time high in the whole life of the survey. So I think that shows that the board's direction, the board is heading in the right direction, and that we need to continue the progress that we've made. As part of that, we want to continue to work on capital improvements. We find efficiencies within the existing budget. In fact, we do, over the past couple of years, we've done a zero-based budgeting exercise where the county executive looks at 2 or 3 departments, tries to find savings internal to the budget, and then rolls those savings into the next fiscal year. And those are savings that we can use to keep the tax rate lower or fund other initiatives. We're saving about $2 million a year through that. So that's the county executive's proposed tax rate. The rate this year is 1.204. The proposal, or the advertised rate, goes up about a penny, 1.1 pennies, 1.1 cents. It's still lower than FY09 when adjusted for inflation. That's why we say there's a flat tax bill in real dollars. If the board adopts this, the schools will receive approximately $20 million more. The county will receive about $15 million more. Of the county government expenditures would only grow by about 0.06%, and 40% of those new investments would be in capital and 27% in public safety. This chart actually kind of highlights what I talked about earlier. As you can see, there was significant growth in the tax bill. It was kind of tracking with some of the other jurisdictions, and then in about fiscal year 10, the board made a strategic decision really based on the fact that there was a recession. Things were difficult. We knew we had to spend less money. And now you can see that line is starting to go up, although we are trying to make it a bit of a flatter trajectory. This is just cost per capita and adjust for inflation. Again, the theme is that we're doing more with less. This is not going out there. This is talks about the number of FTEs we have. Again, showing how lean we are. And I'm flying through these, so we can, during the question period, I can take more, but these are some of the initiatives. Now, this is an important one. This talks about the pay plan adjustment and merit increases that are proposed in the 5-year plan. We have a 3% merit, which is part of our pay for performance system proposed in FY13. And a lot of people are saying, obviously, in the teaching community, how is it that the county is going to offer their employees a pay increase, while on the school side, at least as it was proposed a couple weeks ago, and we've gotten some news that maybe that's continuing to change. But why is that? There's a couple things to keep in mind. As I was preparing for this presentation, I went through the how am I doing? Half gone. Went through the different budgets from FY07 to FY13. The amount of funds transferred to the school system has gone up by 11%. It's $46 million additional dollars. Now, in some years it's been a bigger number. In some years the schools have gotten less. As I said, it depends on what the board does with the rate. But over that period, it's increased by 11%, and the total school budget has grown by about 18%, or $139 million. During the same period, this 6-year period, the county budget, total county budget, not just general fund, has only grown by 7%. Now, I think the reason for that, I'm not bringing that up to criticize the school system. I think Milt talked about some of the challenges that the school board is facing, because we know about inflation and we know about changes in population growth, but how that population changes is very important. And obviously, Prince William County is a great place for families, and so a lot of new families are locating here, and they have school-aged children. So I understand what the schools are going through. But there are several things that we've done on the county side that have not happened on the school side. A couple of examples I've given in correspondence with teachers and others are the VRS changes. A couple years ago, the state authorized the local governments to pass on 5% VRS costs to their Plan 2 employees, people hired after June 2010. And the Board of Supervisors really struggled with this issue because, on the one hand, we didn't want to create two classes of employees, it would be a hit to the newer employees. On the other hand, the savings are significant, and sometimes you have to make difficult decisions in difficult economic times. Ultimately, the board decided to take that step and implement that change, and the savings that we've achieved have actually been $18 million. It's $18 million over 5 years, so it's very significant. The schools have not made that choice, and now ultimately, and Doug Lingenfelter could speak to this better than I can, but ultimately the schools and the county may ultimately have to do that for all of our employees based on state mandates. So that's one thing we did. There's a program called the 401A matching program that we used to have. I think the schools call it the 403B. It costs about $4 million a year. And essentially, if someone wants to put aside funds for retirement, the school system will match it up to 1% to 2%. It's a great program in good times and certainly a good benefit. The county made the difficult decision to eliminate that for our employees a couple years ago. Again, the savings can be applied to other initiatives or pay increases for our own employees. And I think really the most interesting thing I saw when I was looking at the numbers, in FY10, as I said, over time, the schools have gotten more funds from the county and they've gotten more funds from the state, but at the same time, they've been dealing with changes in population. As I said, in different fiscal years, that amount might have gone up or down depending on what the board did. In FY10, the local schools saw a reduction of about $26 million from the county and about $26 million from the state, and that was the big year that we talked about. But at the same year, they got $34 million in funding from the federal government, and this was one-time money. The following year, the funds from the state and local government were essentially flat. The funds from the federal government were lost about $12 million. In FY12, they got more money from the state and the county, but they lost an additional $14 million in federal support. An additional $3 million will be lost this year. And then we've already heard about the challenge associated with the VRS and having to pay back those obligations to the tune of $32 million. These are all real issues. These are very difficult issues that the schools have to deal with. But the issue that the county board has struggled with, and this is across the political spectrum, it's not just the Republicans, it's the Democrats and Republicans together, is the schools are dealing with difficult time. We have a revenue sharing agreement. We give them 56% of the pie, and we're going to stick to that. When the pie, obviously, we'd all like to see the pie bigger, but we have to live within our means. And the question that the Board of County Supervisors is struggling with is how much can the local taxpayer do to backfill changes that have come as a result of loss of federal dollars and changes that have come as a result of state mandates to pay back those VRS obligations sooner than perhaps the school board had anticipated. Again, not necessarily through any fault of their own, but that it is what it is. So it's a challenging situation for the Board of County Supervisors, and we're trying to meet the needs of the community while also balancing the willingness and ability of our citizens to pay. And we're trying to do that as best we can, and it's certainly challenging, and I look forward to the questions and the dialogue this evening. Thank you.
And I want to start out by giving a small presentation about keeping Prince William schools competitive. First, we're going to start with the quiz.
What's the base?
What community in Virginia educates its children in public schools that have the largest class sizes in the entire state? Which Northern Virginia locality spends the least amount per pupil in its public schools? And what large community have educators been told that they will have to go without pay raises for at least the next 3 years? And what Virginia school division will welcome 2,700 plus students next year? At the same time, it is facing an unprecedented budget shortfall. If you answered Prince William County to all of the above, you get to move to the head of the class. Prince William County Schools has the largest student-teacher ratio in the Commonwealth. That equates to the largest class sizes in the state. The school division is looking at increasing class sizes in middle school and high school, which will put class sizes at the state maximum. Well-managed growth is part of our success. With new families come new students. 27,000 new students next year. Not funding the school budget for growth is difficult. Additional students mean additional costs to the school division in staff, classrooms, supplies, and support services. We know money can't buy happiness, but it sure can pay for an excellent education. Prince William County is the 9th wealthiest county in the nation. Prince William County spends $9,852 per pupil, the lowest per pupil investment in Northern Virginia. This amount is significantly less than any other Northern Virginia locality, some of which invest $17,000 or more in their students. Prince William County, as well as the school division, continues to grow in rapid pace. School divisions are funded by federal and state dollars as well as local funds. A cuts-only strategy will damage Virginia's economy and poorly position the locality when prosperity returns. It is our contention that it is the responsibility of the state and our elected boards to communicate with one another, to cooperate with one another, and take leadership in deciding how to adequately fund our schools and do what is best for the children. The members of Prince William Public Education Association are charged with helping our students to succeed because we believe that investing in our students' future is a win-win situation for everyone. I'm only going to answer a few of these questions and then save them for my time over there. Are Prince William County schools able to offer a good education for county students within current resources? The question should be, are Prince William County schools able to offer a great education for county students within current resources? We do have great schools. Families and businesses locate here due to our great schools. Currently, our resources are being stretched thin. Unprecedented budget shortfalls from all sources will eventually take its toll. And I'm asking you and all of our elected officials, do we really want to go from great to good? Because if this continues, we will no longer have a great school system with dedicated teachers that are willing to do what they do day after day. Thank you.
Bill, we talked about schools here. There's some questions that Bonnie Clackwood's asked about figuring and the funding, etc. So do you want to start off with a comment? No, I'm going to have Bill.
Okay. Two things. One is a fact and a figure, and then one is I guess, a discussion of a position, and of course look forward to questions. Last night the school board had its budget markup session. Now we will still have one more crack at the budget next Wednesday when we vote on the final budget. So there may be some additional fine-tuning, but after about 4 hours of discussion and debate and negotiation, we did make additional cuts to the budget that will result in us being able to offer a 2% salary increase to all employees next year. And that, thank you.
You got credit from me on that.
By the way, keep your applause down, please. Thank you very much.
And I think it's important to point out, that includes no change to the 403B matching. That includes no change to the VRS. Health insurance rates will not increase. So those things remain unchanged, and there will be a 2% spending increase or salary increase. The other point on the topic of school board taxing authority, I think the issue is not so much the taxing authority is going to allow school boards to raise taxes. My position in calling that out as a discussion point is that right now the spending and revenue are divorced in the school board policy realm. And so we had a situation where we had the Board of Supervisors and the school board kind of pointing both ways at each other. Well, we can't give raises because we didn't get enough revenue. Well, you can't get more revenue unless you ask us to raise taxes. Well, we're not going to ask them. We're not going to say that you have to raise taxes because it's not our job to raise taxes. And you have this disconnect. Obviously, the Board of Supervisors sets the tax rate, but they don't set our budget. And vice versa, we can't increase our budget. So that was the point about the school board taxing authority, and I hope we have more discussion about it.
Thank you. Delegate Langenfelder?
They don't have to get up. They just go to
Bring the table.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. Thank you. But I think I will get up.
You only got 2 minutes.
I got it. Actually, I'm getting up. I don't really have a lot to rebut. I'm getting up because I have a new hip. I have a new right hip I got 100 days ago. I got this one done 6 years ago. This one was done 100 days ago. This is a better hip. If you need hip surgery, come see me. I'll fix you. Let me just say, I don't really have anything to rebut, but I do want to make this point. I represent 2 counties, and what you're hearing here is a little bit of back and forth, about how this thing is all sorting out, kind of like what the Senate and the House do in the education piece. And as I say, to reiterate, we're very close, guys. We're not miles apart on this thing. So you're going to get a budget. Don't worry about that. That's my personal view. But I will tell you, it's not that way in every single county. There are some counties that are really kind of at each other's throat a little bit over this stuff. Times are tough. People feel pressure not to raise taxes, and people are struggling people who have a job, God bless you, that my wife has a job, and there are a lot of people who don't have a job at all, and so it's extremely difficult to raise taxes in this environment. So I think everybody's trying to work through it, but I'd have to say that it's my judgment, David, just watching and seeing what I'm seeing across the state, that pretty much Prince William's board and school board, I think, are a little more amicable, and I think they understand it's serious business. We can't horse around with it. Okay, don't horse around with the budget. Don't horse around with that. We got to get that done. That's always been my position as an appropriator, which is why I'm thoroughly disgusted we don't have one right this second. But we'll get it. We'll get it.
Thank you, Scott. Supervisor May?
I think
use the microphone.
Yeah, I don't really have any rebuttals. I look forward to the questions. I think what Delegate Lingenfelter said, I think, is a credit to the revenue sharing agreement, and certainly we've had our differences, but it is nothing compared to at least what I don't represent other jurisdictions, but from what I've heard other jurisdictions go through. And Delegate Lingenfelter is one of the hippest members of the General Assembly.
That was truly awful. That was an awful pun.
Ms. Klakowitz?
Try to keep it light.
What was the entire question, please?
Well, the question is to give a 2-month rebuttal, or 2-minute rebuttal back and forth to anybody here or to the comments that were made. You showed slides showing a question about the funding and the crowdedness of our Prince William County schools. There may be some position on the other side here that said, well, maybe it's not really like that at all. So, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I do want to comment on what Mr. Lingenfelter said about Education Week voting us the 4th best in the nation, and that is with our state funding is only 41st% for education, and we have a very wealthy state. I would also like to say about can we compete for good teachers, and I want to tell you about the 2%. The 2% is wonderful. That may be what we get, but Prince William Schools needs to award its educators with something more than small increases. The competitive aspect comes in with the step increases because on a frozen salary scale, new hires are going to come in making the same amount of money as experienced teachers who've been in the system for 3 or 4 years. That is not fair. That is what is going to drive good teachers out of the county. When they can go somewhere like Fairfax or Alexandria or Arlington and go and be put on a step 3 or 4. So that's where the disparity in trying to keep good teachers is. I understand the complexities of trying to adjust everything, but if at all possible, we really, really need to get our teachers up on steps so that they can progress in their career.
Thank you. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Now it's going to be your turn. We're going to be able to have questions till 10 after 9. I will emphasize that they are questions. They're not political commentary or statements or dialogues. They are questions. Try to keep them short and succinct. If there's a special person on the panel that you want to address it to, do so. Martha will go around and speak into the microphone. Here we go. Graham?
Identify your name.
Yes, please. Identify your name and what magisterial district you come from.
Hi, good evening. Great job tonight, all the panelists, moderator. You guys were great. About 4 years ago, I guess it was like 4 or 5 years. Brianna Altman, Occoquan Magisterial District, and Board of Directors Committee 100. About 4 or 5 years ago, we had an interesting panel very similar to this. We had Congressman Connolly, who was then the chairman of Fairfax, and we had Chairman Stewart. And we had a couple of school board members from each district. And Congressman Connolly, well, at that time, Chairman Connolly, suggested that as the wealth increased in Prince William, it was in our best interest to move towards more of a flat budget and away from the revenue sharing. Because he said that we would begin to see trends in less revenue coming from the state. So my question to you is, do you think it's time that we make a change and we move away from the revenue sharing?
As I said earlier, I still support the revenue sharing agreement, and I support it for, I guess, several reasons. And one of the Delegate Lingenfelter mentioned this, and Supervisor May, but we get input from other jurisdictions around the state, and they're really amazed that we don't have a bloodbath every year on our budget. And frankly, I think that it's there's only so much money out there, and we have deferred to the Board of Supervisors to set the revenues, and the question that came up, will a tax rate be unduly burdensome to property owners? That's the Board of Supervisors' call. I can't answer that. So I think that 56.75% has been a good estimate. Places like Loudon and Fairfax, they don't have revenue sharing agreements, and if you look at what happened in the last election, the Fairfax School Board, half of them are gone either through stepping down or being voted out. Loudon County, large turnover in their school board, large turnover in their Board of Supervisors. So that's sort of the byproduct of the fights over tax rates and budgets and so forth. So
Supervisor May?
No, I support keeping it in place as well, for some of the same reasons. What we have right now is, Mill talked a little bit about maybe wanting to have some additional authority and so forth. Really, the way it works in Prince William County is we and I didn't get to that in my presentation, but I had that. You guys have probably seen that dollar chart where it kind of breaks down your local real estate tax dollar and where it goes. And we really do basically give them 56.75%, and then we take the Board of Supervisors takes a very hands-off approach. I can tell you that in other jurisdictions where a budget is kind of presented and it's like, this is the amount of money we need to fund it, I think a lot of times those supervisors start to feel a lot of pressure to go, okay, well, I don't want to give you that much, and then the response to that is, well, how are you going to fund it, or what would you cut? And you start to get supervisors probably saying, oh, well, I've got some ideas, and they roll up their sleeves and really start digging into that. And I think that, that's the reason why Delegate Brickley and others wanted to support having elected school boards, so that they could make those decisions. And so it really does give them the autonomy to make the decisions. And obviously they've been working on it right now, and seems to have gotten some results, maybe not to the full satisfaction of Ms. Klackwitz and others, but maybe headed in the right direction, I hope.
Just briefly, I would tell you that the other county I represent would really do well to look at this revenue sharing agreement, because quite frankly, they're in kind of a interesting, grip on grip hand wrestling deal now, and that's not good. It's not good for budget making. It's very tough. But let me make one quick point. The state doesn't have a dog in that hunt. We're glad Prince William is doing it. We wish that more counties would operate this way. Certainly we wish cities would operate this way. But Prince William should be commended in particular for operating this way. We are a quote wealthy state, but we are not uniformly wealthy, and I think anybody in Northern Virginia knows that. The Northern Virginia has been the bill payer for the state for years, and we could, David, we could develop probably a whole evening on nothing but the composite index and sit up here and talk ad nauseum about how that system works and where there are significant problems inside it. But the short and sweet is this: if you're a relatively well-to-do county, you get less aid from the state rather than more. If you're a small county like Giles, and where you've got high unemployment, they're going to get more state aid. But I would tell you that as a state legislator, I care about Prince William and I care about Fauquier. Those are the people that I represent. But I also have an oath to the Constitution of Virginia, and I have a job to look at the entire educational system of Virginia. And it is very, very tough to do. But one of the things that I will say, years ago when we got cost of competing, and I would say on a bipartisan basis, Republicans and Democrats working together, we have stood solidly behind cost of competing for Prince William County, because the thing that we say to the rest of the state is this, particularly the non-staters: we're sending a lot of money to other school districts around the state. By gosh, the least you can do is help us deal with the cost of living in Northern Virginia. It's huge, and it goes beyond just school teachers. And so we're going to fight for it. We're going to continue to fight for it. But I will tell you this: at every single session we go down there, and those who've been real budget watchers in the state, Northern Virginia delegates and senators have to fight for this every single year.
Ms. Klackwitz? And you don't need to answer any of these.
I agree that the revenue sharing agreement is good for Prince William, but as Mr. May said, it does not allow the school system to create a budget based on need. And during these times, the school system has needs that may not have been happening before. When we talk about the 27,000 new students that are coming into the county, 100. Thank you, dear. he knows how I am with numbers. Sorry. The $20 million that are coming to the school system from the county does not even pay for all of those students. And so, at some point, there needs to be some discussion, not to get rid of the agreement to share, but what else can you do in times like this when you really need more money and you need to ask for more money than you may be getting? And I think that is the responsibility of the boards, to talk to one another and communicate and cooperate and find out how to fund our schools. Thank you.
Okay, next question, Martha.
Yeah, Harry Wiggins, Occoquan. This is Tim Milt. I've served on 3 boards and one as a chairman of one, so I can commiserate and sympathize with you. Is the 56% that you got this year, does that meet the need?
Well, with our school system, there is always something else that we can do more with. Obviously, compensation is a big issue for us, being able to give a step raise, being able to give teachers higher raises. Class sizes are very high. We continue to have high class sizes. Building new schools and having facilities. So there's always an additional need. Is it enough? With education, I don't know. It's never enough. There's always another need. There's always something additional or incremental that we could provide in the way of education.
So that's a no.
Okay. Next question.
Is that a no?
One question. That's it. I'm sorry. Okay. Over here.
You were AJ first. Which one? No, which one?
One of you. Go.
My name is Matt Caddo. I'm the president of the Western Prince William County Homeowners Alliance, also the president of my local HOA, the Oak Valley Homeowners Association. I'm married to a taxpayer. Our communities support teachers, classroom teachers, getting a pay raise. They ought to get a legitimately good pay raise. Let's have quality teachers. Now, what can we do to cut back on some of the other things that in good times might work to get these teachers their raises? We might want to start with the 45 employees that have take-home cars, the 89 administrative employees that make over $123,000 a year. I think that's an area. And Supervisor May, you made a great point about the tax rate adjusted for inflation. My taxpayer wife looked at it when it first came out and said, oh, it's only going to be $110. We live in the western part of Prince William County where in the last decade there's been a significant growth of 70% new houses in our area. Our houses assess higher rates than the older sections of the county. In my neighborhood, the average assessment increase for this year is 13.5%. It means an average tax increase of $850 or more.
Okay, we're going to have to, you're not asking a question.
I'm going to ask you how he reconciles that against the inflation rate, which you said was adjusted for, flat for inflation. On the assessments you pointed out, and the inflation rate doesn't include gas or food, which are very volatile. Okay. What are we going to do to really make it a true flat tax for the homeowners in that area?
Thank you. Supervisor.
Well, did you want to? I'll just say briefly. We scrubbed our budget last night. We came up with $12 million in cuts. Frankly, take-home cars is we have an $860 million operating budget. We've got rid of all the cars. That doesn't make a dent in getting raises. And we have 10,000 employees as far as 89 employees to make over 100,000. Even if we fire 20% of them, again, we're still not making a dent towards the real money. The real money to come up with basically $6 million for a 1% raise. And even if we did all those things, we still wouldn't be up around a 1% raise. And then we get into the question of are we running an efficient school system? So I think we've cut just about what we can.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Hyde. It's a good one, and it's one of my frustrations with respect to the financing system that we have in Prince William County, because not a year goes by, whether the average bill goes up or whether the average bill goes down, I get two phone calls. One of them is from someone saying, Mike, I really appreciate the tax cut that you gave because my bill went down, but I would have been willing to pay a little bit more so that we could give teachers a raise or that we could hire more firefighters. And then I get the same day, get another phone call from someone who was in a neighborhood like yours saying, what is wrong with you? I read that the average tax bill was going to go down by 12%, or I read the average tax bill was going to stay flat or for inflation, and my bill's going up by $1,000. It's not unique to your neighborhood as well. I live in East Lake Ridge, and some of those areas were the hardest hit by the recession, and their values plummeted. And then the next year, they saw some of the biggest increases. One of the reasons that I couldn't bring myself to vote for the budget last year, among others. So it's kind of a function of the financing system we have, and we have to do the best we can with it. And the only tool we have is the average tax bill. So we take all that stuff into account. The unfortunate fact of the matter is, for someone who saw an assessment increase of 14%, we can make additional reductions to the budget. There are some supervisors that are suggesting that. But even someone in your neighborhood, your bill is likely to go up unless we
we go significantly lower than I think that the board is willing to go, even those that are pushing the hardest to get that rate down.
Okay, next question here. And then we've got a question back there.
A.J. Jones, Gainesville District. I heard something in the press that really brought me out here. It was something that was said about the priority order for teacher pay raises. Well, you know, you don't have a school system unless you have children. And you don't have a school system if you don't have someone to educate them. What could be of a higher priority than the teachers? Or do you want a second-rate school system? I have to ask the question. Would you prefer, or would you allow your child to be treated by a second-rate heart surgeon?
Okay, are you addressing it to one person? Well, it's going to be quick.
No.
Okay.
The school budget with state mandates, federal mandates, various program requirements, and with a fixed amount of revenue, we do the best we can. We can't go any higher in class sizes now. We have a very lean administration, and it's like I said before. There's always another need that we can pay money for. We're doing the best we can in tough economic times.
Yeah, we need to remember we take questions from members first.
Okay.
So, members.
I'm Jack the Yumchin Occoquan District. I want to ask a question of our moderator, who his favorite teacher is.
My favorite teacher, it was Miss Joyner. The question really was...
Second grade.
Second grade, right.
Okay. And that's because I sat next to you at the table. But I just wanted to point this out, that our teachers are our treasure, and our kids remember. And the question is, what do we do now? I'll be a judge at the science fair this Saturday. I've been doing it for a couple of decades. And we have great kids, but we need the treasures, our teachers, to inspire them so that they're there at the science fair, that they're inspired to do these things. So the question I ask is, what do we do to maintain a world-class education for our system, which we have right now, but we are stretched thin. We have a lot of pressures, and we have to recognize the treasures that we have there. And I ask, what do we do to maintain a world-class system?
I'll ask Ms. Clatwood first,
Thank you.
and then Delegate Lingenfelter.
Teachers need to be treated fairly, and they need to be compensated fairly, because we are the ones that are educating the future leaders, and we are the real job creators, and we need to be treated as professionals. It is unfortunate that right now there is a tenor around the country that has caused many of us to feel underappreciated, undervalued, and so that conversation needs to change. And then everything possible needs to be done to make sure our children are safe in the schools, make sure they're getting the best education that they can. And I think that you said it, someone said it, that every other profession is valued for their experience. And a teacher that has experience is a very valuable person. And they need to be compensated for that experience and their expertise. And I think that that would go a long way in keeping us a world-class education system.
Delegate Lingenfelter, you're going to have the last word because it's 10 after. Is that? Oh, well, I'm sorry. The president is. Okay.
Can I just make this brief point, David? It certainly is compensation. That's a big piece of it. But I'll tell you something else. When a couple of years ago, 2005, I think I made this speech in the education committee, and I said, unless you can show me that your bill is going to help my wife better teach her kindergartners, my vote is no. And the reason I did that was I kind of had an epiphany. When I first went down to Richmond, I was going to fix everything in the world. And
I got down there, I realized that no, I wasn't. And that in fact, some of the best work you do, and I'm sure David would agree, some of the best work you do is tamp down on some of the, quote, ideas that show up in Richmond that actually don't help. And so let me just make this point. We are asking more and more and more and more of the, what I like to say, the person in the trench, the teacher. We're asking them to do more and more every single day. And some of it is very good, electronic grade books, I mean, all kinds of good stuff. But what's happened to them is they're running at breakneck speed from the moment they show up in school until well after the kids have left in order to do their job. And if you're like my wife, you're coming home in the evening and you continue to do your job. And so I would say that one of the things we've got to look at going forward is the amount of time that we are giving teachers to do their job. One last point. A couple of years ago, somebody had this great idea. We're going to mandate physical education training. Remember that bill? Well, I fought that. And the reason I fought that is I'm not against physical training. I did it for 28 years in the Army. My point was this. Where do you want these teachers to find that extra time? It's gone. And so this is a major area, and we need to look at it, and we need to resource it.
As long as the panelists are willing, I think Jim Southworth has enough tape.
It's fine with me. I believe, in fairness to Delegate Landfelder, I know he's got a head. Okay, fine.
Okay.
And I can stay here all night long. So.
Bernie Porter from the Occoquan District. This is a question for Mr. Johns and Ms. Klakowicz. Could you just elaborate on the difference between the 2% salary increase and the step issue? Because I'm not sure everybody in the general public would understand that. It might be a little bit of insider baseball.
When we talk about a step increase, the school system has a salary pay scale that's similar to the federal GS scale, if many people are familiar with that. So you have a certain grade level, and then you have a certain step within that grade. And I think we go from grade 1 to grade 23. In good times, when we had money, we gave raises that were a step. So you would go from, say, grade 6, step 10 to grade 6, step 11. And that was approximately a 2.85% increase from one step to the next. When we talk about a 2% raise, that's just a flat raise of 2%. The difference there is, and the superintendent talked about this on a couple of occasions, we have some folks who are, based on where they are on their scale, they may be at the top of a step. And so if we do a step increase, they're not going to get a raise. If everyone gets 2%, then everyone, no matter what step that they're at, gets a 2% raise. So we were about a little less than 1% shy of giving everybody a step raise.
Likewise?
What he said is true, that when you get a percent raise, which is really a market share adjustment, it's not a true COLA, everyone gets the same. From the cafeteria worker to the superintendent, you get the same percent. A step moves you along a ladder, and it takes you ahead and helps whatever your retirement benefit is going to be. And right now we have people frozen in steps. And as I explained before, we have first-year teachers coming in and making the same amount of money as someone who's been there 3 years. And that's demoralizing to that person. Someone can be hired from the outside to come in, like someone from Fauquier County may come. They have 3 years experience. They're going to be put on step 3. And so they're jumping over people on the bottom. And that's where the disparity is. It's not that they haven't gotten some small increments of raises, but they have been frozen on that salary scale. And it is a difficult position that Mr. Johns is in the school system to try to find the amount of money that is needed. But it is up to our elected officials to try to do that without doing any harm. Because I'm not going to stand up here and say, find that money and let people go, because that isn't fair either. It's a very difficult position that everyone is in, but we do hope that more money comes in from the state. If we keep that tax rate as it is advertised, if different things happen, then we can get a step. It is unfortunate if with just a step, the nearly 300 people at the top of this pay scale would get nothing. But those are decisions that I cannot make, but just suggestions.
Martha, we've got.
Good evening. John Gray from the Occoquan District. I'll state my question first, and then if I could, my reason for asking the question. And the question is mainly directed to Milt and to Mike, which is, how can you get your board members to listen to the electorate much more? The reason I'm asking that is, tonight, other than Mrs. Jenkins, I don't see any representatives from any Board of Supervisors office here. I don't see any of your fellow school board members here. So everything we're saying here is on deck. Yeah, I apologize. Not to say I didn't see. My apologies. But for the most part, okay, this conversation is being held on deaf ears. But more so, the budget, Mike, was presented on February 14th, which I thought was good, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So I was given on the last Thursday in February. So I thought that was a good jump. But then the Board of Supervisors voted the following Tuesday. Nobody had a chance to see the budget. Even the county supervisor budget committees were supposed to get their documents that Friday. I've been on a budget committee since 1991. We never got to see it, but yet the Board of Supervisors voted on Tuesday, okay, for the advertised tax rate, and that meeting, there must have been 1,000 teachers there, all begging and pleading not to set that rate, and with no concern, they just went and set the rate. So my question is, where are they going to listen to what citizens want? We're paying the bill. It's our kids going to schools. What more can your two boards do to listen to the constituents and actually do what they want?
Supervisor Mike? I think that's something that's in some ways incumbent upon each individual supervisor to determine the manner in which that they want to interact with their constituents. And with respect to the tax rate advertisement, that was the county executive's recommendation. John, you followed it for a number of years, so you know that sometimes it was in vogue to sort of set a 5-year plan, and then when the county executive would come back and say, okay, here's the budget that you asked me to prepare, the supervisor would say, well, how could you do that? Right? We need to advertise at a different rate and everything else like that. I think this year the board did say, we gave guidance, we advertised in accordance with that guidance. I know that some people would have preferred that we advertise higher. I think different board members take different positions on that. Mine has always been that you want to advertise somewhere within a neighborhood where you ultimately might be comfortable where you end up. I think sometimes in years past the rate would be advertised so high that it would create a false expectation in the community that the board would be willing to go up to that amount when in fact they weren't. So I think it's sort of a transparency issue. What I do, and as you know, is I host a series of town hall meetings once the budget comes out to solicit feedback from the community and try to have an open door policy. And I guess I'm happy to pass your comment along to the other board members. But I do think some of that is up to the individual supervisor to make sure that they're hearing from the community. I would also say, and you know this as well as I do, having campaigned before, you hear from a lot of different people on issues, and it's not just the folks that show up at the board meetings. I have opinions on things, and I think that board members try to, or at least I do. I can't speak for other board members. Try to go out to as many groups and individuals as possible to try to solicit feedback. It's a good question.
As far as tonight, we have Allison Satterwhite is in the back. She's come out tonight. We have I know other board members are doing town hall meetings. I think there are a couple of other meetings with community leaders that are happening at the same time. So that might have affected tonight. I'm not sure what the invite list is on Committee of 100 as far as for the other folks to show up. But I would say that we do spend a lot of time listening, and when we look at there was a question before about priorities on the school board budget. A couple of years ago, we looked at things like making cuts in specialty programs, about making payments for exams and some other things. And we had 500 people fill an auditorium at Stonewall Jackson High School with angry parents and students. Don't cut specialty transportation. Don't cut middle school sports. Don't cut payments for AP exams. So we hear from many different groups at many different times, and that's what makes it difficult to do that prioritization.
Elected officials are always invited to attend these meetings. Martha?
May I just answer Mr. John's question about, or statement about who is invited to the Committee of 100. The Committee of 100 is open to the public, and we are very glad to see all you folks here, whether you came for dinner and enjoyed our buffet or whether you just came later on for the program. So we are happy to see you. There are no requirements whatsoever. We're happy if you join us, and but we are open to the public. There is no limitation on that.
Should we, with that, we've got a question with that?
Quick question. My name is Lillian Garden, and I'm with the Coles Magisterial District. I heard 56% that is given, but it's actually 56.75%. Can any of you tell me what in equations is the 0.75% in dollars and cents?
The question has to do with the percentage of the general fund that the county is allocating to the school board.
But it changes every year.
Yeah. How much is 0.75% worth?
A penny. 56.75. A penny is $3 million.
A penny's about it's about 4.2 million. It's about 2.7 million to the schools. Is a penny on tax rate. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're working on that. Question back there?
We have one question, and I think we ought to wind up with this one if we could.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Smith, recently retired reading specialist in Woodbridge District, and I'm also a resident. I'm just really concerned about the class size that's been referred to. We have the highest student-teacher ratio in the state. Our teachers have been without a step increase. My former colleagues have been without a step increase for 3 years, and been told to be ready to not get one for another 3 years. That's why there are people working to the rule. They're really angry, and they're very frustrated. I also understand that we have a contingency fund.
I'm going to have to ask you please to ask the question.
I'm asking a question.
Okay.
We have a contingency fund of $90 million. Now, no, it's a contingency for emergencies. I think this constitutes an emergency. How can we take advantage of some of those funds? We don't need any great selection of that. How can we take advantage of this situation to use those contingency funds to take care of our teachers, to provide that step increase, and the lower class size? They're horrible. Class size in our middle schools are terrible.
We don't have a contingency fund.
Yeah, well, that's a great point, and we do have a contingency fund, and it was collected over years and years after having given the school system 56.75%. So, I mean, I know it's very attractive to see sort of a pot of funds sitting there and let's take it and spend it on things, but the reason that the board sets aside that money is for true emergencies, and I'm not trying to downplay the importance of compensation for teachers, but the kinds of emergencies that are contemplated by that revenue stabilization fund is catastrophic. Hurricane Katrina, terrorist attacks, those kind of things. And I suspect that if we were to dip into those funds to provide employee compensation or something else, that would reflect very, very negatively on our AAA bond rating when we go to the rating agencies. And that AAA bond rating is worth a lot of money, because when we build capital projects, when we build new schools, for example, we build them a lot cheaper than if we didn't have that AAA bond rating, because we get a better interest rate. And so I think over the long term, for the health of the schools, those funds need to stay where they are.
Okay, with that, we're going to close the questioning. I apologize if I cut anybody short from asking their question. Take full responsibility for that. We could have obviously kept this open for another hour or two because fantastic questions, great participation by the audience. I can't thank you enough personally for obviously your high interest in the education, the quality of education for our children in Prince William County. To our panelists, you did an exceptionally fine job. I can't thank you enough. They don't get paid anywhere nearly enough, any of the four of them, probably that for all the hours, and I know personally hours that are put in day and night, 24/7. So with that, let's please give them a big thank you.